Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Monkey Patching Podcast, where we go bananas about all things worlds, AI ministers, and more. My name's Murillo, and I'm joined by my friend Bart. Hey, Bart.
Hey, Murillo.
How are you?
I'm doing very well. How about you?
Doing good. What do we have today, Bart?
We have a lot of things.
A lot of things.
We more or less skipped 1 week, right? So we're a little bit behind. But we filtered it down. Let's start with first, right?
Yes, let's do it.
We have World Labs. World Labs details a breakthrough in 3D world generation, producing larger, more detailed environments from a single image with noticeable higher fidelity. We can be relatively short on this. We discussed it already a few times on previous episodes. We see this more and more 3D world models coming up. This started with, I think, well, maybe started this bit. It's not started, but I think the most impressive one for me the last weeks was the one from Google. Thank you.
Yes. I saw you looking inside. It was like, he does it.
Yeah, and then we had one from Dynamics Labs, so we also covered, and now we have one from World Labs, which is called Marble, and the page you're showing here shows a very impressive 3D world, right? It starts from basically an image, and you can also do a text prompt. You can also test it on the website. I did test it. I was extremely underwhelmed. So from the starting point, it looks, where you start in the world, it looks very, very interesting, very detailed, very. But then you walk around and everything becomes very grainy, undefined, completely different from here in this video. But that's just from my very simple, let's try this in the browser 1 minute test.
But then
so maybe I'm not completely doing it justice.
Yeah, but maybe they also pre-generate maybe the thing. Maybe you're generating on the fly. Maybe it takes some time and then.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Maybe I'm not completely doing it justice because the videos that they show here are very, very impressive. Yeah.
And for the people following the video, this is like the Hobbit house, kind of, from the
exactly,
Lord of the Rings thing, right? Like it looks a lot like it. Not sure if it exactly is, but.
And you can basically, with the controls that you can also test in the browser, you can basically more or less fly around in this world.
Yeah, indeed. And also it shows for the people listening only, on the top right, there's also a little map, kind of, like almost like a video game map that kind of shows. So it also ensures the consistency, I guess, like on the layout of the house, right?
Yeah, and then we already discussed this previous episodes, but it's interesting to see when and if this will come to game development or even like collaborative world development. Think of it like Minecraft, but then prompted.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. No, so, it's really cool. Really cool. I think the wow factor is a bit lower now. I think after you see the two previous ones. Do you know, because I remember for Genie 3 we discussed, and you also shared that it also had emerging properties. So like if you're skiing down, if you go straight, it was faster. Is there anything surprising like this as well with these ones, or not that you've?
I don't think so. But it's, again, maybe it's, I'm not doing them justice.
Yeah.
It's really recent. So actually the news is from you see it here on the page, is from the September 16th, and it was released, but I literally just saw it 15 minutes before we started recording.
Cool. And these are all large foundational models, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah, the thing is, I think it's a bit of a pity in a way that all these things are very proprietary, right? We don't know exactly how it works or how they're different, right? So it's the third one and the third one in a row that we have no information of the internals.
Limited, I would say, yeah.
Limited.
I think there are some good papers coming from DeepMind where they do details of how they're building it, how they're also running inference on it. But indeed, it's still we have very limited access to these models as a community.
Yeah, indeed. But I think also the question that in my head is it very different? Is one very different from the other as well? That's also what I'm.
Good question. Yeah.
What I'm wondering. Okay, what else do we have? We have AI's teleportation. So Geoffrey Litt argues AI feels like teleportation. It removes friction, but it also erases the serendipity that friction once created. Through vivid thought experiments like an quote-unquote AGI teleporter and wooden stove analogies, he shows how shortcuts quietly reshape culture and attention. I thought this article was...
What does this mean?
Yeah, exactly. So I thought it's like a thought experiment, not a thought experiment, but like he does an interesting analogy, right? He starts with like the years 2035. The AutoGo instance, in parentheses AGI, so it's tongue in cheek, right? Has been invented, so now you can go anywhere instantly. And then he kind of goes over, again, very parallel to AI, right? So it says in the beginning, there's a lot of issues, like people maybe, like the tech is expensive and unreliable, so people spend a lot of money and then they maybe end up in different wrong places, right? And everyone starts making fun of them, like, look at this, they look so stupid. But then things start to get cheaper, better, and then everyone goes, and then he basically does a bit of a thought experiment how this would change society, right? So maybe people are living further from the cities. Now people are living in cabins, maybe now the Mount Everest now is like a super populated touristic spot. And then he said that and then he also talks more about the other side effects, right? Like maybe people stop wandering around, just like get lost, right? The newer kids, they see no point. And it's like, why would you walk anywhere? You can just teleport. The in-between moments disappear, right? So like you're at work and then you're at home, but you don't have that commute time, right? And then he starts to think more on what are the consequences of these things, right? So he also brings another analogy. So from a philosopher, Albert Borgman, that he talks about the difference between a wooden stove and I guess like a gas one or something, right? How in the beginning, if you had a wooden stove and you want to warm up your house, you had to chop the wood, you had to do all these things. There was a whole culture, there was a whole tradition to it. So also these technological advancements also change our culture, change the way that we do these things, right? Again, he links to AI, right? But I think it's kind of clear how these things are connected.
And this link to AI is more from like how this technology develops point of view, if I understand correctly.
How it develops, but also how it impacts us, right? So for example, mental, like reading, right? Doing research now. Yeah. Before there was a whole process of okay, you need to find the resources, you need to see different things. There's an exercise in your brain to really try to digest and try to understand. Maybe the explanation is not good, so you need to go here. And I think we talked about it last time that maybe AI and maybe some other things are more efficient, but in that efficiency, you lose other things as well, right? So I think he mentions like if reading is quote unquote transmitting facts into my head, then the AI summary is probably more efficient. But by not reading, by not doing these exercises, you're also losing a lot of these things, right? You lose some friction that is also productive, that is also conductive to your life. He also, like in the very end, he says, okay, during COVID, right, he kind of had teleportation via Zoom, like via remote working. And what you actually saw a lot of people saying that they had they would walk around the house before they started work. So they just walk around and go back home because they actually missed the commute, right? And I think sometimes and this is a good example, right? Like if you go to the office or if you go to a different room or just having that mental space to, okay, I'm transitioning from my personal life to my professional life, right? And I think that does a lot for you, but if you're not careful or if you're not mindful, these things change. And sometimes you're in you feel weird, but you don't know why you feel weird. Right. And I think so in the end, he says like, he's not trying to say that AI is bad, but he's just trying to say there's friction and there's good friction, quote unquote, and there's like bad friction, right? And he's trying to be very intentional about keeping the good friction around. So it's more of a, again, thought exercise. I think, again, we talked a little bit last time about how the impact of AI, how you were concerned, quote unquote, that your brain muscles were getting atrophied because relying so much on AI these days, right?
Yeah, and actually, since then, I've followed some discussions. I think it was on LinkedIn, or maybe it was on Hacker News. On this, like, is there a risk of using AI, like when you use AI, and that it, like you say, atrophies these skills of let's say, critical thinking to get to a content piece, to get to create something. And I think the default reaction to that is, and in discussions, is a lot like, yes, but this responsibility is on you. It's on you if you lose those things. But I think that's too easy a conclusion, right? Like, it's very easy to say, you need to practice more, you need to do this more, you need to do that more. Like, it's not how, I don't think that's how society works as a whole. That's how individuals work, but not society.
Misses the point a bit. I mean, in the end of the day, everything is your responsibility, right?
Exactly.
Right. So, I see why the argument comes up, right? It's the same reason, like, okay, I try to work out frequently, right? Why do I work out? It's not because I need to lift heavy things on my day-to-day job, right? But so why do we go out our way to be uncomfortable to do this? And like I get it.
Well, exactly. It's a good analogy. Yeah. It's a bit like saying, yeah, do healthy stuff if you want to be healthy, right? Like, it's
exactly. Right, exactly.
It's too easy to say.
Exactly. And I feel like it's a bit reductive, right? And I think this article, and I think what we're saying before, is more of it's like how AI will or is already changing our culture, our society. And I think the impact, like, okay, maybe exercise is an easy one, quote unquote, but like there's a lot of stuff that AI is doing today that we don't know what's actually going to be the impact in for kids' generations, right?
True.
So I think it's, again, to be seen. I definitely think it's interesting that we are aware, and I think asking the question maybe is the most important thing. Like, the answer is not as relevant as asking the question and thinking about it. I also started to wonder a bit more on, like, and also I listened to this philosophy podcast, and they talk about stoicism, and one of the things they talk about is like wisdom or whatever takes work, right? And maybe there's no shortcutting it, and maybe AI will help you with some things, but nothing's really going to replace the work of actually doing it, right? But I think it's also a bit of a skill to know how to learn, to know how to pursue things, to know how to do all that.
Yeah, and it might accelerate you in that, but it will not replace it. If you really want to become like an expert in something.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of times it's like this, like AI will help you get from 0 to 1 very quickly, way faster than you would. But from 1 to 2, you still need to put in the work, right? And maybe the way you put in the work is different because AI is there, but that doesn't mean that there is no work, right? So there's no shortcuts. I think that's a bit that's also something I believe personally. So, yeah. All right. What else do we have?
We have Shuttle Cobra brings infrastructure from code to Python, letting type hints and decorators spin up AWS resources and cron jobs directly from your code.
Yes. So this Shuttle is actually, the website is shuttle.dev, because it used to be shuttle.rs. So it's like shuttlers, I guess. Which was, it wasn't infrastructure as code, it was infrastructure in code or something. Infrastructure from code. So that's what they call it. And the idea is that in Rust, you have the types, right? The types are very descriptive. And then the idea is that just by saying you have an API, so this is mainly for REST APIs, and I said, I have this API that talks to this database, and you specify the database type, and just by the code, you can already know what kind of infrastructure you expect behind it. Like what kind of databases, what kind of models, what kind of tables, what kind of this. So the idea is that they pushed this a bit in Rust, right? It was in Rust, to basically have code, you deploy it, and they'll create everything serverless for you, right? When I saw that, I thought it was cool. I never really, I just did they had a, what's the name? Advent of Code challenge using Shuttle. So I did that. I haven't done much more than this. But when I did it, I was also thinking, like, could you do something like this for Python? So I thought it back then with type hints.
So it's actually thanks to you that they build it now.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. I probably said it to someone. It's like, it's fine. I don't need the credit. It's fine. I don't know. So I was just thinking a bit about it, and then now I just saw they actually announced it. So you see here a bit of piece of code I'm sharing on the screen, right? You have their library, Shuttle runtime, Shuttle task, and Shuttle common. And then you just have, I guess, like you specify the database. So you actually have to specify with the type ins what kind of database you expect. buckets. So I guess this is for S3, so AWS buckets as well, with policies and everything. And more code and whatever. But basically, based on the type-ins, you specify what kind of infrastructure you need. And then you just do shuttle deploy. And then you will go there. It is limited. Today, I think they only do like cron jobs and stuff like that. But I thought it was a neat idea, something new as well. I don't know if this is something you have seen before, this infrastructure from code.
First time that I heard, that I hear the term. I'm a bit wondering, while you go through it, it's the first time I see it, I'm a bit wondering like what the specific use cases would be. Like for a small time project, I think there's definitely value in that. But at the same time, for a small term project, you can also use something like fly.io, and it like auto-magically configures everything so you can just use it. And I think from the moment you have like that's maybe the biggest question I would have with this, like from the moment you start building a large infrastructure, there's probably also things that you want to have configured outside your application. So how do you do that? Like, do you then have configuration within this app, but also maybe in another microservice? And maybe there's also something that is not really app related, but more policy related to users, and that you need to then do in Terraform. Like, I have a hard time imagining how this scales, but maybe I'm just not seeing the full picture here.
To be honest, I wouldn't have an answer to all the questions. I definitely see myself using this for small stuff, just to try it out, or just to have something quick, I also have questions how you would scale. If you have a bigger team and all these things, or if you want to have more services and all that. Not sure. I do think that they are, I don't know how old the company is, but maybe they do have solutions for this, but I haven't looked as much into it as well. But I like the new approach, like something, like a new way of looking at things.
Yeah, it's very close to the application layer, of course. That makes it interesting. It makes it easier to reason about why stuff is configured the way it is configured.
For sure.
I think there are a lot of advantages into like more the declarative configuration, like you have a Terraform, but like your Terraform specifications, like they are further removed from the application. So you need to like look at two different things to really understand why is stuff being set up.
Yeah, you need to, in a way, you have to keep more things in your head, right? Because you have to know that there's this and there's that. Like you see some Terraform code, right? And you say, okay, this is here, but then you have to make sense of how this interacts with that and how this and this. This is kind of like more packaged, but again, I think for a small thing, I definitely see how it will work. But I think, like you said, if you scale, you have more stuff, and you have maybe stuff that doesn't translate to code necessarily. Like, how do you put it all together?
And what I also don't really see from the thing that you're sharing here is like if the actual deployment is linked to that logic, or do you need to write your separate CI for the actual deployment, or that they do have some.
So I think everything is on their side.
Functions to deploy.
They have like a CLI, so I think it's just like with Shuttle deploy, and I think it just goes. That's how I understand it.
Okay. So it sets up the resources, in this case, AWS, and then it also deploys the application.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you just have the code, you just have one file and just say Shuttle deploy, and then you create the infrastructure behind it and deploy the code. And then I guess if you want to do it again, you would update it. Yeah, I think also this forces, right? If you have like also different applications that depend on the same infrastructure, you also force it a bit to have a bit of a monorepo style, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I'll try to play with it. I mean, for toy stuff. Let's see. What else do we have? And it's me now, I guess. My turn.
Yes. Go ahead.
We have Nature's first peer-review look at DeepSeek R1 reveals a reasoning LLM trained for about $294,000. Not on rivals' outputs, challenging cost assumptions.
Yeah, it's interesting. What you're showing on the screen is the Nature article on this. What it is about is that the DeepSeek R1 model basically published in Nature their own paper on how the R1 model was developed. And it's the first time that there is a peer-reviewed paper on building these kind of models. That is the the interesting thing here.
They had published it before, but it wasn't peer reviewed or what?
Exactly. Exactly. They published the information before, but it was not in a peer reviewed journal. And I don't think it was about R1 actually. I think it was about DeepSeek V3. That was
V3,
published.
yeah, maybe. Yeah.
So I think that is the interesting thing here, that we have a peer reviewed article on this. I hope it sets a precedent for other AI players as well. But there are some interesting stuff coming out there. So you have the actual training of the base LLM for R1. It cost 6 million. The R1 reasoning layer cost 294,000, which is together a lot of money, but like only a fraction of what the other big players used up until that point. They were mainly trained on NVIDIA 800s, which now have also been restricted by US export controls. And also interesting to see like the whole peer review process. Also had the team a bit change the content of the paper, so they reduced the anthropomorphization within the writing of the paper. They also added clarifications on training data. They added clarifications on safety, basically after feedback from the reviewer.
That's nice. I like that.
That's nice,
especially the non-anthropomorphizing so much. All these LLMs, I think it doesn't help the discussion in general.
Yeah, exactly.
Good.
So yeah, let's hope it sets a precedent and that we see more of these things going forward.
Yeah, I mean, we saw a lot of papers being published. Now I'm actually just thinking back, like how many of those were actually peer reviewed and how many were just published, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of also what we've discussed here is things that are basically published on an internal blog of OpenAI or Anthropic, right?
Wow, I think we also cover things pretty quickly, right? I think maybe by the time, if you wait for everything to be peer reviewed, you're also falling a bit behind. So yeah. But I think it's good. I think the scrutiny, can be, even if it's a bit delayed, I think this is, for me, I'm really happy with this. So cool. Nice to see. To more of that in the future. What else?
Hacker news. Debate. Alibaba's new AI chip pitched as H20 class amid talk of China cancelling NVIDIA orders, domestic ecosystems, and geopolitics over GPUs. So this is a Hacker News thread on Alibaba's new AI chip that they just introduced. Trying to find the name of it. But it's basically targets to be compatible with, in terms of performance, with NVIDIA's H20 class. And it looks like they're getting there. Of course, there's a lot of discussion on whether it's or not it's that performance comparity is really relevant if you do not have CUDA. Because CUDA enables a lot. It's much easier to deploy stuff. A lot?
You mean more like on the software?
On the development side, yeah. Like when you want to train something, when you want to run inference something on, and it supports CUDA, like it's probably way easier to get started. There is also what we see is that, I think that is the interesting thing from this article. So we have Alibaba that are stating that they have an H20 performance compatible chip now, and this comes basically at the same time that China is, quote unquote, telling companies to cancel NVIDIA orders. We've heard some of these rumors. We had some confirmation from NVIDIA there as well. And it is, in my eyes, basically boosting and accelerating what China can do themselves when it comes to AI chips.
Yeah, indeed. Well, yeah, there's a clear signal from the US, right?
Yeah, and I think it's something that actually was started in Biden era. The restriction of AI chips to China, basically to make sure that US basically stayed the number one competitor in this space. I think the result will be the opposite, right? I think having these export restrictions in place, like make sure that they're just going like we need to get our shit in order. We need to be able to make this ourselves. I think that is what is happening today.
Yeah, for sure. Which is logical as well.
Which is logical. Yeah, that is true. And apparently, I think that was for a long time the feeling that no one else had the ability to really manufacture this. But I think with enough time, even they will even overcome the software challenges, right? Because I think the mode these days is not actually building these chips, but it's more like the software challenges, right? Like how do you make sure that what you build can also be used but for trading and inference with the stack that is out there. Yeah, but I think also that is something that is not easy to fix, but it's with time you can do a lot of things.
Well, I think so too. And I think, long term, I'm even wondering if the US is not having the shorter end of the stick here, right? Because if China also retaliates with the manufacturing of a lot of products, right? How are you going to compete with that, right? So it'd be, and then asking you here, but do you see any reasons why China wouldn't be able to compete with AI chips aside from being a bit behind, quote unquote?
I think this is not my field of expertise, but I think the building performant AI chips these days basically means going as small as you possibly can to cram as much things on a chip as you can. And I think by far TSMC is the leading player in this, which is also it's basically the fab lab for NVIDIA.
Yeah. TSMC is the Taiwan semiconductor.
Exactly, yeah. And I think that is what they have to go up against. But that is, I think the strength that China has in this is that they do not fear going into IP territory.
Yeah.
That's one thing. And the other thing is that's like where they miss funding by VC, by private equity. They have the government stepping in, basically, to basically fill this gap of funding that is needed. And I think that there the government is doing a very interesting task. And we also discussed this, like they have a lot of engineers at government level to heavily invest in this. And well, we see these results now, right? And also when it comes to public funding by Beijing, I think it also, if they would start also funding even domestic or non-domestic vendors to start using these chips, I think that's an alley that can also like further spur the development in this, and even maybe a bit decodify the needed stack if they get enough customers on these new type of chips. And I don't think that is one thing starts another, because if that happens, then maybe there are also external investors that become more interested in these things.
Yeah, I also the feeling I get also is that the US hasn't really been a very reliable partner, right? So I think I wouldn't be surprised if more people want to reduce the over-reliance over American products, right? So yeah, let's see what happens. But I think I would imagine we'll see more of these stories with Alibaba or other companies as well coming up with their own AI chips. And what else? We have Fastly Survey says seniors ship 2.5 times more AI generated code than juniors, though many still spend time fixing outputs before production. Question mark, do you feel more productive with AI?
I do feel more productive, yeah.
You're very careful with the words because you probably heard this before as well. There's some, there are studies that kind of say that it's only perception, right?
Exactly.
So this is also what this article also touches upon. But one thing that they broke it down, I think that's the most interesting image that I saw. Actually, this was shared by a colleague as well. It's basically senior developers that get the most bang for the buck when they use AI generated code, right? So you see here, like over 50% of the code being AI generated. If you look at that, it's over 30% for senior developers and less than, I don't know, a bit over 10% for junior developers. So you see there's a bit of a skew, right? Like the senior developers, I guess they know how to prompt things and they know how to, that's a bit the hypothesis that I take, right? Knowing what good code looks like, knowing what a good interfaces should be, knowing how to structure your code. That's how you get the most out of these things. And a lot of times junior developers, maybe they don't know as well. I mean, also junior, senior is a bit very broad, like what's junior, what's senior, but that's a bit what I take home from this as well.
Also when you're looking at this graph, my takeaway is also like, at the very least, when you look at something, 25% is AI generated.
Yeah, at least that.
Right?
But it's also a bit like, if we had like a line by line comparison, because AI also loves to leave comments, but the comments are most of the time not that helpful, right? For code that is shipped. So I also wonder how much of that is actually comments. And I think it's like, I know I had a ex-colleague, he had a whole rant about this. He was super irritated. Yeah, but like, why you do this? Why you do this? This is obvious. Code should just be readable. You shouldn't put comments. And I think it's also a bit because there's a lot of people say leaving comments is good practice, right? But then I think now you get to the point with AI that you have so many comments that it's like, that's just adds noise, right? Like if your code is well written.
Yeah, I don't not really share that feeling, but I think it depends a lot on which LLM you also use for it.
Sure. But like, maybe a question, do you delete comments as well? Or would you, like, do you remember, I mean, actually, I don't know, but like, would you be someone that like you ask the LLM to do something and then you go around when you're reviewing, it's like, okay, drop this comment, drop this comments, drop this is not, I don't know.
But I do think it's good practice, like, but then become a bit to AI assisted coding, like to have like a file, depending again a bit on the LLM you're using, but like a central file where you have some best practices, and the best practice could be that you define for that project, like leave comments only in these situations.
Yeah. I agree.
And that you have your LLM like adhere to that.
Well, I also don't think it's bad.
But I think that's maybe the thing, like, build an opinion on this and implement it.
But I also don't think it's bad if the AI is leaving you comments, because you, like, AI is a system, right? And it's trying to communicate with you what it's trying to do. And I think in that sense, I think it's fine. But I feel like as soon as you vetted it, I have found myself like just like deleting comments because like, okay, this makes sense, or this. I also wouldn't be happy to see, and maybe it is true, and that in newer models this doesn't happen as much, but I wouldn't be as happy to see like a pull request where 50% of the lines are actually comments.
True. This is an interesting graph that you're showing now.
Yeah.
How often do you spend extra time fixing AI code? 65% says frequently. 0.8% says never.
They're the liars.
This is my experience as well. But I think there is this trade-off, because generating this AI code goes super quickly, but then you also spend some time fixing it.
Yeah, for sure. I think maybe they also they say that when developers use AI tools, they took 19% longer, and they say that maybe the disconnect is about psychology, because when you're using AI coding, you're not typing, right? So it feels like you're faster, but actually like the actual fixing maybe takes longer than you would if you were just doing yourself and if you're slowly trying to get to it. It could be, but I'm not convinced yet for some reason. I mean, I heard the arguments before, but I'm not fully convinced, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of it, and maybe that's also a bit why you see more being shipped by senior engineers. Like a lot of it comes down to like how specific are your prompts, right? So I use Cloud Code or Codex CLI quite a bit, and then when you become lazy, your prompts become worse, and then it takes longer to fix it. But when you're very specific and say, yeah, this doesn't work, this is the error, please fix that error.
Yeah,
it's completely different from we have something that is not working.
Fix it.
And not specify what exactly is not working, right? Or what line of code, or
you just copy paste some error and just say, fix this error.
Exactly.
Like,
exactly.
Yeah. No, I know what you're saying. Yeah. I think what I do sometimes, because I'm still lazy to type, I just use speech to text, and I just talk and I say, okay, I just speak out loud and say, okay, this and this and this is not working. I think this I tested, this is okay. Sometimes I also ask the LLM to ask me follow-up questions, but one question at a time. So to help me diagnose the problem, that also helps me. Yeah. But then I look a bit weird as well. Like I'm just I was with my wife next to me, right? And I was just working. I was just talking with the computer, and every 2 seconds, it's like, "What? No, that's for you." Like, "What?" It's like, "No, no, I'm just talking
Nice.
to the AI." Yeah, she's like, "You're so weird." It's like, "Yeah, I know. I'm just."
And what do
waiting.
you use to do that?
Mac has a speech to text built
I
in.
like that. Just speech to text. Yeah, okay.
Speech to text. Then usually I'm reading as well, and then you get some words wrong, and I delete and I this. But like overall, I feel like I'm faster. But again,
you're just like in your recliner, laying back.
Yeah. Just chilling,
talking to your LM.
Yeah, something like that. The other thing too, I tried that for writing the other day. Like I just needed to write an article or something, and I was trying it out. But then I think it's weird because I think I talk fast than I think, and sometimes the time that it takes for me to type, it helps me think exactly what the next sentence should be, or how should I link concepts, and how should I do this, you know? And if I just talk, it's too fast, I feel. So,
but at the same time, then you could use like your rough thoughts,
and then just like a limit.
Your speech to text is like write them all down, and then if LLM make something concise of it. But I think they're like for articles, generating text for articles, it's tricky, right? I mean, how often, like, and more like on LinkedIn, for example, you see from the post that's clearly written by an LLM.
Yeah.
Like it completely takes the authenticity out of it.
For sure. I think there's a lot of, it's very personal, tone and the words you use and all these things. So that's why I think it's way more tricky.
And I think it's difficult because I sometimes write an article, but I think also it's very, because I've thought about this, like maybe you can give instructions about what is your tone of voice? I don't know. I don't know my tone. Like it's hard to specify for yourself what your tone of voice is, right?
You know, but I heard that there was a AI company that would do that. They would do AI generated marketing, but they would clone your voice in the sense of your tone of voice. I think it was called Cloaky or something. But then they would train, they would fine tune models based on your posts. Okay, so you don't have to specify it, but they would just say, these are the kind of things, like this guy's Dutch, probably a lot of cheese stuff, you know, like stuff like that.
Tulips, huh?
Someone compared you to Van Nistelrooy.
I saw it. I need to go to the barbershop again. My hair needs to be shorter to look like him.
We'll get there. Back to the article. So this one, I thought it was interesting. How have AI tools affected your enjoyment at work? And 30% of people, 30.8, says significantly more enjoyable. Are you surprised about this?
I'm actually surprised, yeah.
Yeah, I was also surprised. I think it's also...
because I wouldn't say that.
Well, actually, so 30% said significantly more enjoyable. The biggest category is actually somewhat more enjoyable by 48.8%. And the significantly less or somewhat less enjoyable was like summed up is like what, 4%, 4 point some percent. It's like very little.
Depends a lot from your point of view, of course. But I think from the writing code point of view, I think I would say what were the options?
Significantly less. I would say
for me,
somewhat less.
Either I think no real change or somewhat less enjoyable.
Yeah, for me as well. I would say like it took a bit away but yeah.
It takes a little bit away this I'm trying to solve a puzzle.
Yeah, feeling. Like that aha, like I cracked. Yeah, like, exactly. Like it's really like you solve a problem. You know, it takes a bit away. Yeah, for me it's the same. I heard I think they say something like this here, like maybe it's the dopamine hit, but like maybe people have less enjoyment because of this, but at the same time, some people find it more because you're faster or something. I don't know. I'm a bit surprised by this. I also suspect, and I think I mentioned this before, that I'd have some ADD traits. And I think that's why also I really enjoy the problem solving. You know, I really enjoy the grind and be like, I got it now. I see what's wrong. And I think with AI, even if you solve it, even if you're kind of next to it, it doesn't feel as much. Like, I don't know. Like it doesn't feel like, even if it's me next to an AI agent that we're talking back and forth and I say, this is the problem, fix it, and it fixes, it doesn't feel like I was like, I got it.
Yeah. That's a bit the journey to it, right? Like I'm making an Electron app now. It's like there's a bug. And then normally like you go into code, like you run it a few times, you build some tests around it, and then finally, okay, the bug is gone. Okay, nice.
Yes.
And now it's like, I type a prompt and then I see it running and then comes back and okay, it's fixed.
Okay.
Like it's less of a journey, right?
It's like, okay, what's next? Yeah, I get it. Yeah, that's it. That's what I wanted to bring here. I thought this was well, at least was surprising, yeah. But maybe there's, I don't know. Maybe I need to talk to some of these people. Yes.
Albania. Albania has an AI-generated digital minister named Diella to oversee public tenders, promising transparency to combat corruption and speed up services. So this is a very interesting one. It's I think it's a bit of a hyped up way to as a title. I think a minister is a bit overstating it, but what they're basically saying is that public tenders, instead of having them treated by ministers or their teams, to actually have an AI judge a public tender. What does it mean? So, and their objective here is to make the government corruption free. Maybe it's a little bit like, what is a public tender? Let's say a government wants to build a new road. A simple example, like they have to basically do a request for proposals. That is a public tender. You basically ask everybody that is interested to build this road for you to come up with their proposal. And you need to judge those proposals in a fair and transparent manner, and then it's based on quality and price. It's a combination of these things often. And then you choose the party that will build this road for you.
Ideally.
And then the risk, of course, is if there is corruption, is that it's not the best price and best quality that company that builds the road, but it's the friend of Murillo that builds the road for you.
Never happened again.
And I think it's an interesting. I think it's a very interesting experiment. I'm wondering how far they actually are with implementing this. I think it's also like it creates a lot of other risks, right? Like let's assume all of this is actually handled by an AI. Like the next thing that people are going to do in their public tender is try to inject prompts to definitely get their public tender.
Yeah.
That's an interesting one. So I hope that we will actually have some transparency about their implementation process of this.
Yeah, they do say they want it to be step by step and 100% clear. I mean, maybe the AI developer, like 100% clear with AI system, like it's never going to be 100% clear, right? Like why the decisions was this and that, unless it's, I mean, maybe it is, but I don't know. But I feel like if you want to make this completely isolated from people to intervene, to give full agency to the system, I also feel like it's a bit of a, I don't know, recipe for disaster a bit, you know? You just put in,
exactly. There are a lot of risks to that as well, right?
Yeah, like you trust it, like you put everything in a little box and you trust that it will work well. But then if it doesn't work well, who's also going to contest it?
True.
Because the whole point of like, you don't want anyone to be in touch with it, right? Like the first person to contest is going to say, you're corrupt, you're doing, you know, like, you know what I'm saying? It's like it's a bit of a,
it's very difficult. And people will try to find ways around. Like
for sure. I also
the first line in my proposal will be, whatever follows below, make sure that you give this one the high score.
In white font, you know, like
very small and white font.
Yeah, exactly. Because I don't know. To me, it also feels a bit abrupt, right? Like, I mean, maybe it's not maybe this is just a news point, but like,
well, it's probably a bit overstated. I don't think that they're already doing this, but but it's good to see also these things, like instead of trying to use LLMs to influence politics.
Yeah.
I think this is the way to build transparency and more fair practices into politics, right?
I do think, I agree. I think it's a creative way to use AI for sure. And I think even if it is not successful, I think it's a bit like maybe gives people's ideas of like, okay, how can we use these things for good? So.
Exactly.
And what else do we have for the last topic of the day? We have a judge paused Anthropic's $1.5 billion book piracy settlement, questioning payouts and process, and set another hearing for September 25th to reassess approval. So we covered that Anthropic was going to pay $1.5 billion because basically it's again a recap. They downloaded books illegally and they used to train models. A judge ruled that using the books to train models, it's fine, but downloading them illegally is not fine. And then before they were legally fined, Anthropic reached a settlement of 1.5 billion, which would get to 3,000 for each book that Anthropic downloaded. So that was an agreement, and it wasn't a legal precedent, but it was definitely a precedent. And then later, so September 9th, a little while ago, the judge actually pulled the brakes on this. He said that he didn't, I think, well, he did say that he didn't want lawyers to create a deal behind closed doors that will force, quote unquote, down the throats of authors, right? So I think they didn't want people to use this as a kind of like a precedent, right? To just kind of not give any freedom for authors to say, like, so basically things were being decided for authors behind their backs, kind of without their input, right? He also mentioned that so this is a quote from him. I have an uneasy feeling about hangers on with all this money on the table. So I think he also felt a bit the weight of this decision, right? And how this sets a precedent and all these things. And that's why also he wanted to slow down, to really think it through. I was also talking to another colleague that he mentioned that his friend is a judge in Belgium. And he said that the amount of things that the judge needs to become an expert in, quote unquote, quickly, to make these decisions, to make these rulings, is actually very challenging. It's very impressive, right?
So interesting take. Yeah,
it was a different perspective, and when reading this as well, like it gave me a bit of new set of eyes, right? And maybe it also, I empathize more with him saying like, "Hey, let's slow down, right? Like, let's make sure we're doing this okay." Like, I think he understood that there's a lot riding on this. So maybe let's slow down a bit and see what is the ins and outs of this.
Indeed.
What do you think of this part? Because also someone said, and I think it was one of the lawyers, he said that class sections are, well, this is, I guess it's one of the lawyers, class sections are supposed to resolve cases, not create new disputes, and certainly not between the class members who were harmed in the first place. The author's attorney, so there's actually someone that would beneficiate the benefiting party, let's say. Where do you stand on all this part? Do you think?
Yeah, I think that is the last one you mentioned here is a very fair one. Like if you have a settlement on even if it's between Anthropic and the people that actually bring the case for $3,000 per book, there is probably going to be a lot of discussion and debate between authors on whether this is fair or not, right? I don't think that individual authors, their stance, and it's also super hard to do this because a lot of different books, like it's not really reflected in the settlement. I think that is, it's interesting that this judge does it. It also, this is very vague, but it feels right that they're taking a more deliberative analysis before moving further. Yeah, I hope that at some point we get the infrastructure in place to actually get some traceability on this.
Yeah.
Because even if we do have this, and we do have a ruling that you need to license data and that every time that you use it, you need to pay a fine, it's still very much based on trust, right?
Yes, true.
But we don't really have that in place. But while we do have it for music, right? Like not for AI generated music, but music we use overall.
Yeah.
Is that if you use it on YouTube or you use it wherever, like you need to pay something, and it's a very small fee to probably like a publishing house, and then it goes to the actual artist. But it's very hard to do for anything that ends up at the other side of an LLM to trace back to the actual data it was trained on. And I do hope that at some point we of this.
Me too. And when I first read about this, I was like, what the fuck? Like it looked like it was getting resolved. It looked like it was a good resolution. Why they're trying to mix things up again? But after some reflection as well, I don't. So at first I was a bit like, not against, right? But I was a bit like, why would you do this? But I think now also after thinking a bit about, because it's not really stopping the settlement to take place is just on hold, right? He wants to think things through before. And I think it's also because he understands this is a bit of a one-way door, right? Like once you set a precedent, once you set expectations, and he wants to think things through, I guess, before. And then also the comment of the colleague, right? These people are not experts on these things, right? There's a lot of stuff that they need to come to grasp with, right? To a certain depth, of course, but I can understand how it's probably prudent to.
Yeah, exactly, and I think I think it looks good on the surface. It's $3,000 per covered book, but if you think that through a little bit, like let's for simplicity's sake, say that the book actually cost $30 in the shop. That's just 100 customers, right?
Yeah, true.
And it's a one-time thing that when you can probably vary for a very, very, very long time use that data. So that's it's also just a fraction. And even if you then think about what the author gets, if it's a small-time author, they maybe get 10% of that €30. So that's 300 basically 300 euros that they get for a book.
Yeah, that's
now
true.
Being used.
Because I think we started from the primer of if you buy the book and you train, it's fine. So we were comparing the number with the cost of one book, because that's what you need legally to do it. But it's true, huh? Like if you think of how many books should Anthropic have to buy to really pay back to the authors, right? It shouldn't be one.
Yeah, and the difficult thing, of course, is like if you put this in your training data set, it's very hard to reason about what will it enable. Will it enable thousands and thousands of pages of content being created by someone? I mean, then it should be paid way more. Like if it's maybe once in the coming 10 years that something was used, and then it makes a lot of sense. But like that's also what makes it hard, is we don't have this traceability infrastructure.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, and I'm not sure how feasible that is. Also, like to really trace it back, right? Maybe not in the near future, at least. But true, very true. And I'm also wondering how this is going to impact, because we also saw right after this that Apple was sued, and there's probably going to be like a whole bunch of lawsuits as well. How this is also going to impact the other ones. Alrighty. Cool. I think that was it. That's what we had for today. Unless you want to say anything else about anything, Bart, any last parting words of wisdom?
No, not really.
Today.
There was one, maybe just a small tidbit, but I'm a bit loose on the details. I think it's, yeah. We did discuss Nano Banana from Google, image generation model. Super interesting, the image generation model. What actually was released since we last discussed is SeedDream 4.0. Looks also very impressive. I think it's the first model there where I don't see the difference with a real picture anymore. So maybe for people you should check out SeedDream. Maybe we'll do a bit more in depth next time.
And maybe we can cover more. Maybe we can share on the screen as well.
It's from ByteDance, by the way.
ByteDance. But it's not open source, or is it?
No, I don't think it's open source now.
But I saw that they even had, because we have the LLM Arena, which people select the best answers, right? And there was something like that for images, right? They were putting. And SeedDream 4.0 was a bit ahead of Nano Banana.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's very impressive.
Really cool. Again, things move fast around this part of the.
Thanks everybody for listening. And
thank you. Thank you, Bart. Thanks everyone.
See you all next week.
See everyone next week. Ciao.
Ciao.